Hey there, folks! So, my girlfriend and I decided to go camping in eastern Pennsylvania back in 2016. The air was thick with humidity. The setting sun cast long shadows through the trees. We thought it would be a normal camping trip. We were wrong. My girlfriend and I craved adventure, a chance to disconnect, to reconnect with nature. We found it in the backcountry, miles from civilization. No cell service and primitive campsites. Just us and the wilderness. It was going to be perfect. It felt remote, isolated, peaceful, but something felt off. A sense of being watched. We set up camp as darkness crept in and the temperature started to get cooler. The darkness felt different here, heavier somehow. We built a fire, the flames a small comfort against the encroaching darkness and chill. As we ate our dinner we had packed, we talked about our hopes for the trip. We laughed. But the unease lingered. The woods was silent, except for the crackling fire. Too silent. Little did we know this place had some serious spooky vibes. Let's dive into our terrifying camping experience. The next day, we decided to explore the nearby dirt roads. We wanted to find a secluded spot for a swim. The further we drove, the more isolated we felt, which is what we were wanting, at least at first. The trees started to become more dense as we drove. We passed only one other car that day. It was a rusted pickup truck with its hood open and a woman stood beside it. Her face was etched with worry. She looked at us expectantly as we slowed down, as if she needed help. But something in her eyes made me hesitate. Something desperate, hungry. So making a quick decision for my own and my girlfriend's safety, we didn't stop. I told myself it was because we didn't have cell service. We couldn't help her if she needed it. We didn't have anything in my car to help get her car working either. But the truth was, I felt a chill run down my spine when our eyes met. We drove on, the encounter leaving an unsettling feeling for myself and my girlfriend. Later that day, as we drove back towards our campsite from the place we found to go swimming, we noticed something else that was strange. A beat-up sedan passed us. The driver, a man with a scraggly beard and cold, dead eyes, stared at us as he drove by. Not just a normal glace or stare, but he fully turned his body to stare at us as we passed each other. We didn't think much of it at the time, other than the fact that it was just weird. Just another lost person in the vast wilderness. But then, we saw the car again, parked on the side of the road hidden among the trees. This time the man was not in the sedan. We passed by slowly, our hearts pounding in our chests. A wave of dread washed over us. We couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that we were not alone. As we drove back to our campsite, we argued about whether we should leave. My girlfriend was convinced that we were imagining things, that the woman with the truck just needed help, that the man in the car was probably just a local. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Dangerously wrong. I felt the need for us to get out of the woods. After arguing about whether we should leave or not, we finally decided to stay. We decided to just try and enjoy the last night of our trip. We built up a fire again, hoping to keep the darkness at bay. But the fear lingered. The silence was broken only by the crackling fire and the pounding of our hearts and our quiet conversations. Sleep came slowly that night, fitful and filled with nightmares. I dreamt of dark figures lurking in the trees, of cold, dead eyes watching our every move. And then I woke up. The fire had died down to embers, casting a faint glow on the campsite. The air was heavy with moisture and the smell of pine needles. The humidity was strong now, but something else hung in the air, a sense of dread so thick I could taste it. It was more intense this time. My girlfriend was still asleep beside me. I lay there for a moment, listening to her steady breathing, trying to calm my racing heart. But the feeling of unease only grew stronger. Something was wrong. I could feel it. Then I heard it. A noise. It was low at first, hardly discernible from the normal wood noise. A distant rumble that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. It grew louder, closer. It was a mechanical grinding sound like a chainsaw tearing through metal. That was not a noise you are supposed to hear in the middle of the night, in the middle of the woods. It was then that I felt true terror grip me. This was no animal. This was something else. The noise continued to grow louder and closer. It was like nothing I had ever heard before. A cross between a chainsaw and a shovel dragging over gravel. It seemed to surround us, envelop us. My heart pounded in my chest. I could feel the blood rushing in my ears. I shook my girlfriend awake, my voice a panicked whisper. "Wake up! We need to go! Now!" She sat up groggily, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. "What is it? What's wrong?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just pointed to the darkness beyond the dying embers of our fire. The noise was deafening now. There was no mistaking it. Something was out there, and it was coming for us. My girlfriend's eyes widened in terror as she listened to the sound. It seemed to echo through the trees, bouncing off the darkness. "What is that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I shook my head, fear paralyzing me. "I don't know," I breathed. "But we need to get out of here. Now!" I scrambled to my feet and began frantically throwing our gear into our backpacks. Our movements felt slow and clumsy in the grip of terror. The noise was getting closer, louder, more insistent. Whispers slithered through the trees. Branches snapped and groaned. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. We had to get out of there. My voice was high-pitched, frantic. The words were barely audible over the terrifying sound that was now shaking the ground beneath our feet. My girlfriend, her face pale and streaked with tears, nodded, her eyes wide with terror. She scrambled to her feet, and together we stumbled back, away from the noise, deeper into the darkness. I grabbed the machete we had brought for firewood, its cold steel suddenly reassuring in my trembling hand. I felt the need to get anything for protection. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the terrifying situation. What was that sound? What was out there? Was it human or something else? The rational part of my brain screamed that there had to be a logical explanation. A fallen tree, a piece of machinery. But deep down, I knew that what we were experiencing was something far more sinister, something that defied explanation, something that sent shivers down my spine and made my blood run cold. We ran through the darkness, our flashlight beam a feeble attempt to pierce the oppressive blackness. The sound pursued us, relentless, echoing through the trees. I could feel the vibrations through the soles of my feet, pounding in my chest. My lungs burned with exertion, but we couldn't stop. We didn't dare stop. We didn't know where we were going. We just knew we had to get away from that sound, from that place. The forest seemed to close in around us. The darkness was a living, breathing entity. I could hear my girlfriend's ragged breathing beside me, her hand clutching tightly to my arm. We ran until we could run no more, our bodies spent, our lungs screaming for air. We collapsed on the forest floor, gasping for breath, our eyes darting nervously in the darkness. The sound had stopped, and that is all we were wanting. We lay there for a long time, too terrified to move, too exhausted to speak. The silence was deafening. The only sound was the pounding of our hearts and the rasp of our breathing. Slowly, the terror began to subside, replaced by a bone-chilling dread. We had to find our way back to the site to get my car and get out of the woods. At the time we started running into the woods, we felt that we couldn't get to the car. It was too far away and was in the direction of the noise. Now, we were lost, alone, and hunted in the darkness. We decided to wait until morning so we could see where we were going. We knew it was risky, but we were too exhausted to go any further. We huddled together at the base of a large oak tree, our backs pressed against its rough bark, our eyes scanning the impenetrable darkness. As the first rays of the sun pierced through the dense canopy, we finally allowed ourselves to breathe a sigh of relief. With the light, the fear started to evaporate. We had made it through the night, but the terror was far from over. We got up and ventured back in the direction we felt that we came from. After some time, we actually found our campsite, which was a huge relief. As we packed up our campsite, we noticed something strange. A single crushed beer can lay near the cold ashes of our campfire. It wasn't ours. We didn't bring beer. And we know for a fact it wasn't there when we made the fire the night before. We had been drinking bottled water the entire time. I bent down to pick the can up to show my girlfriend. When I grabbed it, the can was cold, the dew still fresh on its side. Someone had been there after we ran off. They had been watching us. The thought sent a fresh wave of terror through me once again. We weren't alone. We had been hunted. We packed up our gear with trembling hands, our eyes darting nervously into the surrounding woods. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. We both knew that we had just escaped something truly terrifying. We quickly hiked back to our car in silence, our senses on high alert. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig sent shivers down our spines. We made it back to our car and drove away from that place as fast as we could. We didn't stop driving until we reached the relative safety of a busy truck stop. Even then, we couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched or even followed. We abandoned our camping trip and spent the rest of our vacation in populated campsites, seeking solace in the company of other people. We never went off on our own for the rest of the trip. We never went back to that remote part of eastern Pennsylvania. The memory of that night still haunts me. The sound of that machine, the feeling of being watched, the chilling realization that we were not alone in the darkness.